Good Monday morning, and thanks for listening to my musing today, which is about taxonomy. Have you ever wondered, if you opened up your brain, how does it store all the things that you're supposed to remember? I mean, from old phone numbers and addresses to the smells that were at some birthday party when you were a kid, the names of the baseball team that you followed way back when. All that stuff is stored in there somewhere, even if it's not always the easiest thing to access. It's amazing to me how the brain is able to file certain memories away. But a part of that taxonomy system, if you imagine your brain as a whole bunch of filing cabinets, I wonder if sometimes that does a little bit of damage to the ways that we think about difficult subjects. What do I mean by that? I think it was on Earth Day where I talked about our categorizations for wildflowers and weeds. Well, it's like those are different cabinets. One is good and one is bad. Even though when we look at dandelions or bluebonnets or whatever the case may be, when we think about how we do the taxonomy of those objects, we say, well, these are really similar. They have leaves, they have petals, they're colorful, they're fragrant, they attract bees or pollinators. What makes one bad and one good? We create these kinds of pathways in our heads where we're able to file things away quickly. We're able to process tons and tons of information. But sometimes the nuance of a certain conversation or the ways that we do taxonomy and categorization, well, that does damage to the object that we're thinking about. Capitalism and communism. How do those come together when we talk about specific policies? And what about the ways that marketing folk or maybe even a minister is able to turn your filing system a little bit in their favor? A clear example is that a lot of times people say, well, they're doing politics, when what I think they're actually doing is partisanship. Politics can be a dirty word, even though I think I've mused about this before. It simply means at the most basic level, the things we do together as a community. But partisanship, those maybe unnatural or unnecessary divides that we set up, well, that would be bad, naked partisanship, as opposed to politics. One is bad, one is good. So what I've been musing about is how, as people of faith, we are supposed to process all of the information that comes to us through Scripture, through experience, through traditions, through the news that we watch. How are we supposed to take it all in? What do we remember? And how do we use our filing systems to our advantage? Because at some level, we know that Jesus says that we're not supposed to judge. But what about how we file things away? What are the things that we're supposed to be for? What are the things we're supposed to be against? And how, whenever we have new encounters, especially about difficult or complicated subjects, how do we process them always with grace and always with love? The judgments that we can make are sometimes so quick. I wonder how, as people of faith, we might take some time to meditate, to think significantly and seriously how we hold things in this kind of miscellaneous middle file, where we say, at some times and on certain occasions, we can give more consideration to the other things, the other people, the bad files that we have so often. Because I think at the heart of the gospel, we hear that what Jesus is able to do is he's able to think, to see, and to act with grace. So that's what I've been musing about a little bit. Taxonomy. How do we make those snap judgments between what's good and what's bad? And how do we start to calm ourselves down from those quick, inappropriate judgments? I have a little more to say about that. I had some inspiration for why I'm thinking about those things this week based in a book called The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. So if you make quick judgments and you're interested in musing about those things too, I hope you'll stick around. There's a Bible passage that I really, really like. It's Colossians 4:6, and it says, "Let every word from your mouth be gracious, seasoned with salt." I'm not sure that's the Bible telling us we're supposed to have salty language, but it's something close to that. How can everything that comes out of our mouth be a word of grace, a word of non-judgment, a word of acceptance? Maybe that's what it's saying. But unfortunately, Colossians 4:6 comes right after a verse where it says, "Masters, be fair and just to your slaves." If I was to read that a passage comes in the context of slavery, or that the book condones slavery, or that the author of the book condones slavery, I would think, I don't have time for any of this. What's the point? I know that slavery is bad. I know I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about people who endorse slavery. And at the same time, because it's the Bible, and because I've given undue attention to that, I've come to really appreciate that verse, that every word should be gracious, seasoned with salt. I don't know how we give undue attention or undue kindness to everything that we are supposed to file or process. But for me, that verse has meant a lot. Mr. Rogers means a lot, and I think that he imbues his every word with graciousness, and that's something that I aspire to. But how do I file that away? I, as I mentioned, was reading a book by Heather McGhee called The Sum of Us, and in that book, I learned about it from listening to Bill Moyer's podcast, which I sometimes do. And I'm aware that even mentioning the name Bill Moyers can cause people to categorize the way I think, based on the people that I associate with. The thesis of The Sum of Us kind of starts around something historically that happened around community pools, that the United States had these beautiful palatial pools that would be a massive draw to the area, that whenever a community wanted to draw in business, when they wanted to draw in new families, they would take tax money and out of their Parks and Recs department or something like that, they would create these beautiful pools, and everyone was happy about having wonderful, beautiful pools where they could hang out with their neighbors. That was until the pools started to desegregate. In different instances in the book, one notable one in Montgomery, Alabama, there was a beautiful pool, and rather than saying, well, of course, everyone's welcome, everyone pays taxes, everyone can come and enjoy some splashing around in the sun, the community decided to close the pool. It would be better if there was no pool rather than us enjoying the pool all together. And she uses that metaphor of a closing pool to symbolize all the ways that we can think about our collective power, the sum of us, that if we're able to do things together, we're able to enjoy more. An interesting thesis. But I'm also aware that in reading that book, which Susan used as her book group study just a week ago or so, it all sounded like liberal do-gooder sorts of things. I mean, I listened to it on Bill Moyer, so of course. So how am I supposed to file or process the message of the book without having to file it away in other sorts of big ideological file folders? Is there a way to cut through the tribalism that exists around communities doing good and speak to people who think, well, I'm fine with communities, but I worry about my taxes, I worry about my freedoms, and you get caught not talking about how wonderful it would be to have a pool or a library or cheaper colleges or things like that. Instead, you get caught in a more abstract conversation, the bigger files or the bigger drawers where you're starting to talk about socialism versus capitalism or something like that. I wonder, as a church, as a society, are we able to judge certain ideas on their merits alone without having to think about the labels, the baggage, the taxonomy that goes along with it? Speaking personally, and I'm confessing a little bit, but I guess I have the privilege to do that every once in a while. Just associating a book with where I heard it on a podcast with a certain name, I already have preconceptions about what I should be listening to, or whether I think, well, that's someone I trust and that's an idea I already like without hearing it. Or, oh, I would never listen to that. That's a bunch of junk. What's the agenda there? I already know what those people are for and those people are about, and I don't have any time for that. Jesus seems to cut against those sorts of categorizations. How do we do the same? I don't know how optimistic I am actually about our ability to break through those tribes whenever we get our information from different sources that we've prejudged or over time we built certain trust or distrust in. But I know the challenge of the time is to listen past those filing cabinets. Somehow we have to break out of our normal modes of taxonomy, at least I hope so that we listen to people that we don't normally listen to. We associate with people we don't always associate with. Maybe. That's fraught, right? And I've been musing about that, not on camera, but I've been thinking about that a lot as of late. That we belong to tribes because we feel like we belong, we feel like we're accepted, but we can only be accepted and belong with the undertow that there is some exclusion, there is something that doesn't belong. That's what taxonomy is all about. We have reasons why we say this is an animal, this is a plant, this is a fungi, etc., etc. And we do that so well and so quickly, I wonder about our ability to look past those things. In some ways, I think we're hardwired to judge in those sorts of ways. But I wonder if every word can be grace seasoned with salt, what the opportunities we have to move past that might be. And that moves us into thinking about political and theological correctness. There was an article I read some time ago, and it started off talking about etiquette, which interestingly, in the library, etiquette is often right next to the ethics section, because they're about the rules and the manners that govern our lives. Etiquette, ethics. And in the past, you might be judged for the way you tied your tie, the silverware that you're supposed to use at a certain occasion, whether it's acceptable to slurp your soup and drink from the bowl or not. These things were a sign of class. That if you knew how to drink a cup of tea, if you knew how to pour it appropriately, if you knew which fork to use, and that the spoon at the top is the one for dessert, then you had indicated that you had been educated. You belonged to a certain class that had its own rules and mannerisms. So this article said that we don't worry about those things so much anymore, but there is a new etiquette, a new way of filing people based on the ways that they speak and the ways that they act that are small, subtle clues to the kinds of lives that they lead. If you were to walk up to a counter, or you're in a drive-in and someone said, "Oh no thanks, I don't use plastic straws, I have my own metal one," you can already file that person away. That they are aware of the problems of plastic, surprisingly hard to say, the problems of plastic. They're green, they're earth creation care focused, and I can make all these sorts of judgments because they don't use plastic straws. We can do similar things based on whether people do or do not order from Amazon, that they're trying to overthrow the corporate overlords and get past all of the marketing from big tech because they go to mom and pop shops, similar to the ways that people avoided Walmart in the past. So we can infer information about people based not on which fork they use, but the stores where they shop, the groups that they're a part of. And so we can make these judgments based on such small things as whether or not people use plastic straws or plastic bags at the grocery store. We file them away. For the sum of us, I wonder if there's a way that we move past the class divisions or those quick judgments that we can make so that we recognize that we are all tied together, even for the people we most vehemently disagree with. Things like community pools, colleges, healthcare, that we are dependent on one another. And our inability to speak to one another about important things or to write people off without taking people's self-interest into consideration, well, that really weakens our ability to do democracy well. What does that lead to? Well, a lot of things. It could lead to, I know I've mused about this before, other forms of government, ones that we don't champion so much. Plutocracy, oligarchy, where the rich or the few are the ones who govern us because they have access to marketing tools. They have access to the ways that we think and file all of our information. We make quick judgments about what is good and what's bad. And I'm afraid that this musing is becoming a little bit like a rant from a 24-hour news station, which is not what I want to do. Because aside from political correctness, within the church there's a place for us to think about what counts as theological correctness. Probably because we are a good Presbyterian church. We've moved beyond talking about manhood because we know that it is better and more sensible and more theologically correct to say humankind rather than mankind. But how do we communicate through those labels, through those divisions and markers, so that we realize that within the one church of Jesus Christ, people who stick to different ways of speaking and acting and thinking are a part of the community that we share? That Jesus might actually love people who are what? What are the labels or the files that you have? Evangelical instead of mainline. Conservative and progressive. Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant. Charismatic or thinking. Bible-believing or aware of historical critical methods when it comes to the Bible. That we have been divided into tribes, and sometimes it is helpful or easy to paint with broad brushes so we can move the conversation along, so that every conversation doesn't get bogged down in what does it mean to be Bible believing, and what do you really think about the virgin birth and the resurrection and the miracles, etc., and so forth and so on. It's a lot easier if we just have a big label that says, well, you're a person that reads the Bible like I do, and you're a person who does not. But as people of faith, can we recognize the places where we have something in common, like a common sacred text, that reading it, interpreting it together is always complicated, and that we are tied up into the welfare and the not-so-welfare of other people. Before I get rambling too much about etiquette and the files, I want to conclude with this. Take some time this week, and I'm curious about how you do this, to think about the ways that you have filed certain information into good and bad folders, or good and bad drawers. What are the things that make you trust someone quickly, agree with someone quickly, give them moral credit? And what are the things that are taboo, where you go, I don't have any time for that. That's not a conversation that I want to be a part of. If you can label those things, I wonder if you can take an extra second to put salt to your words, to give some flavor and some time to it, to say that within you, even if we disagree and even if I have a file folder for you, I think God loves and cares for you anyway. And the ways that I communicate with you, the ways that I show care to you, matter to me. And let the other things fall away. Let the first thing that you see in another person be the image of God, something that you can care about deeply, and that you have a little bit of self-interest in that person doing well. Because if that person can do well, you can do well. If you're doing well at the expense of the other person, I don't think those successes are going to be long-lived. So, read Heather McGee's book, The Sum of Us. It's excellent. Think about the ways you file people away, file ideas away. Always try to expand your horizon on what is interesting and what is thoughtful, and keep musing. I know that I will. And for that reason, I guess I will see you next Monday.